Hi, welcome to Grandma's How To's again. Today we're going to can venison or any other kind of meat actually. This ball book, I've had it for 25 years and I think they still make the book. But it kind of tells just about anything you want to know as far as canning. And this I usually use for canning venison in particular today. When you end up with so much deer meat, you just don't know what to do with it, and it'll be freezer burned if you don't use it right away. So I used to can it, and then whenever I didn't know what to make for supper, I would just, and I like the wide mouth so it comes out easier, these jars. Because if it's the small mouth, it's hard to get that out once it's canned. It's pressure cooked and it takes a long time to get it out of there. Anyway, so you take this, even if you froze it already, you can take it out and you can deal with it later. Because say if they just quickly cut your venison up and froze it, well, you can still do it later. Anyway, then it won't be freezer burned. And so you cut it up in cubes. You can do it raw pack or you can brown it first. I just raw packed it because that's just one less process. If you do that, always use good canning jars. Don't use the China ones. They just don't hold up. And this is under pressure, so you don't want a cheap jar. And the lids also, because those lids from China, they just buckle. And you don't want all that junk if you're going to be cooking under high pressure. Anything with low acid, like and also meat, you need to use a pressure canner, not just a water bath. Now, this is my pressure canner. I've had it for probably 40 years. And always just make sure the rubber in here is good. There's a piece of rubber that fits in there. You can have the extension office, your local extension office, check that for you. Make sure everything's clean. I have the gauges that are weighted. It's just a weight. And it tells 10, 5, 15 pounds of pressure. For meat, it's 10. And it says right in your book. So the first thing you do, cut your meat up into chunks. Since I raw pack it, I just put it in there raw. Then I always add a teaspoon of salt. I don't think it's necessary to can it with the salt, but I like at least a teaspoon in each jar. Then don't put any water in when it's raw packed, and it will also tell you that in your book. Fill it only, it says leave a 1-inch headspace. That means leave this much room, because it needs room in there. Now, you don't need to add any water or anything. It makes its own juice later. Okay, so we're doing the raw pack. Then you put your lid on with the canning lid, and put it on, you don't have to screw it on super tight, just so it's just firm, but not too tight. Okay, then I have 2 layers in my canning thing. I fill this canner with at least 2 inches of water, which it also tells you. Then I put a thing of jars, and when I do meat, I use quarts, so there's only room for 1 layer. But sometimes if I do things in pints, then you can put this on top, and you have a room for another whole layer. But I would just do 1. Okay, so you can probably fit 5 in here or even more. That's a lot of meat to have in there. Then what you do is you fit this on there. You get your water boiling. You get all your jars in there, and then you turn it so it's sealed tight. Then you let that steam for at least 10 minutes. That also is in the book. Once it steam comes out of here for 10 minutes. Then you find the 10 pounds of pressure. Now, green beans might only be 5 pounds of pressure, because green beans you have to put in a canner also, and beets, and unless they're pickled. So 10 pounds of pressure. Once that steams for a while, and always watch, it's hot, very hot steam. So you stick that on there. Now this little thing is going to start going around like this. When it's at a nice, even, like even speed, then that's 10 pounds of pressure. Now, with meat, you need to leave that at least an hour and 15 minutes. And when it comes out of there, it's tender and it's got its own juice and ready to have for supper. All you have to do is maybe add like a can of cream and chicken soup and maybe a little kitchen bouquet to a browning sauce to make it a little brown so it looks a little better, and you can put onions or whatever you want with it. And now if you want to brown it first and then put it in your jars, then you do need to add a little water, because by browning it you took some of that water out of the meat, and it also tells you that in the book. So now this is under pressure for an hour and 15 minutes. Now then when it's time, you shut that burner off. I let that just sit for about 15 minutes. Then you take a pot holder, because this is going to be hot, and you get out of there. Let that steam release. That will release for at least, it's not going to hurt to go a little extra. Let it release till there's no steam coming out of there. It won't let you in here if there is too much steam anyway. So then once it will lock up, and it won't let you open this if there's too much pressure yet. Then when it is not too much pressure anymore, it'll let you open this up, and then don't touch anything for a minute, because these are still cooking. You know, they're hot and they're like little bombs. So you be very careful. Don't just slam these jars around, but you can take them with a pot holder and just set them carefully to the side, and they are done. But you don't want to just go slamming them around, because they're under pressure. That's a lot of pressure for a little jar. Now I'm going to put this over here, and now that's one thing you can do. Now you could do it with anything. If you had a lot of pork or whatever, you can do it with. Now I have a lot of venison. The venison starts out nice and red. What we did was we froze what we wanted, like a couple of the roasts, and we just froze it the way it was. So when I took it out of the freezer, I can slice it very thin when it's half frozen. If it isn't half frozen, it's going to be too hard to slice thin. Now it turns dark once you can add any kind of jerky mix you want. Everywhere you go you can find these mixes, or you can go online and get a recipe that you like, and my husband and sons actually make it a lot more than I do, but I kind of watched him, and so anyway, you mix this jerky mix here, and it marinades for at least 4 to 12 hours actually, and that'll tell on the package also. It turns darker as you're doing this. Okay, then we have a dehydrator that has many layers to it, and you just keep putting it on here until you get to the top. Just fill this dehydrator up with the jerky. And then my husband only likes to do it for about 5 hours, even though they say you can do it up longer. And then he just tests it every now and then to see if that's the desired dryness he wants. Sometimes it gets too dry otherwise. Okay, so that's the jerky. Now when I do put salt in my jars, I usually use canning salt because it doesn't have iodine in it, and like if you were going to make pickles, it'll kind of turn your pickles cloudy if you use that with the iodine in it. Okay, so make sure there's no cracks around the top of your jar also when you're going to do this, and you can you just feel with your thumbnail, and you could feel how if there's a crack. And also, you need to sterilize your jars. If you have a dishwasher, great. Put them in there. They come out beautiful. I don't have a dishwasher. I am the dishwasher. So I boil my jars in water after I wash them. And then I have nice warm jars when I put that in there. But make sure to sterilize your jars and stuff. Okay, when you're doing the browned version, you can brown your venison, put it in here, and you can use beef broth and to fill it up this far. And then, because you have to add water if it's the browned version. Beef broth would probably be better than just plain old water. Okay, now, let's see. And also that pressure canner is good for like the beets and the green beans. You can't do that with just a water thing. Okay, I already said you need to have frozen meat for that. Now, my last thing we'll do is my favorite thing, is we'll go over here and I make breaded venison. You'll never have it any other way once you have it like this. I already did a couple to show you what they look like, but I add a pretty good portion of oil, any kind of oil. Canola oil is good. And then you can use any kind of seasoning, steak seasoning, or like, I kind of like this seasoned salt with a lot of paprika in it because it makes your venison nice and brown then. And I'll show you how to do it. And then you get it to this point, and then I put a little foil over the top, maybe a tablespoon of this juice in there, water or juice, about a tablespoon, just to give it a little steam. And then I put that foil on tight, and I bake it for at least a half an hour, and then it's really tender. Because right now it's delicious, but it's not as tender as it could be if you put it in the oven. And I also do this with pork chops, or say if you have a pork loin, you can cut 30 pork chops out of that, and you can make it breaded like this, put it in your refrigerator and with foil on, and if you have a bunch of company coming the next day, you can just throw it in the oven for an hour and you have the best meal you've ever had. Okay, so this is warm enough. Now I had saved out some of that venison and I cut it pretty thin. You can cut it a little thicker if you want to. But I always put it in a little flour first because I think that holds the breading on better than if you don't. Okay, and then I'm going to put it in a little egg. I just put a little egg in there, and I beat that up. And I always use Ritz crackers, because Ritz crackers are sweet, and they're just better than most. You can use anything you want, though. Any kind of crackers, but Ritz are the best. Or Townhouse, or something that has a little sweetness to it. Alright, so then I just get that going. And my burner isn't that hot yet. Turn it up, put it in the flour, and a little egg. Now, like I say, you can do this with pork chops. I love it with pork chops or pork loin. Pork loin is maybe $15 for a great big pork loin, and you can feed 20 people. And I'm telling you, it's really good. Okay, so I'm going to do one more. And then this is a real good little, just even something for a potluck, you know, to bring with you. All right, now I'll put a little bit of seasoned salt on there. And like I say, if it's the red paprika, it kind of browns it better, and then it looks pretty. Okay, and I normally would fill that pan right up. Okay, and let's see, what else? And all of them about at least 40 minutes. Now, when I do these Ritz cracker crumbs, I put a bunch in a little bag, some kind of a bag, and just take my rollings into it. And then that way you don't make such a mess. All right, I guess I think I told you everything I was going to tell you. And then, like I say, I just put this foil on real tight and bake it for about 40 minutes. And I take a little bit of this juice, add a little bit of water, maybe a quarter, even an eighth of a cup or something, just to give it a little bit of steam when you're cooking it. Okay, well, I think that's it for the venison and any kind of meat, really. So maybe later we'll have time to do some outdoor things. It's 65 degrees today, and that's nice for January. So maybe we'll go outside and do something there. Okay, don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.